Welcome back to Fire Emblem Radiant Dawn. Last time we finished part 1, so now it's time to see what's been going on in Crimea in the meantime. Part 2 of Countries and Kings, a title that only makes sense in the extended script. I'll be explaining that later.
Dain has been reborn. Word of King Peleus's coronation reaches neighboring Crimea within days. Crimea itself has spent the past 3 years rebuilding from the damage it suffered during the Mad King's War. News that Ashnard's son now sits on Dain's throne sends waves of unease and worry rippling across the land. Alas, this is not the only thing disturbing the people of Crimea during this time. There is an ever-widening gap emerging between Crimea's noble class and the nation's young ruler, Queen Alincia. Crimea lost its king during the Dain invasion, and Alincia is still an inexperienced ruler. What's more, her very existence was a secret from the public, and so she came unexpectedly to her succession. Many of Crimea's noble houses raised their voices in protest against her rule. Alincia's desire for a long-lasting peace has driven her to strengthen Crimea's ties with the Laguz nation of Gallia, and to renounce Crimea's claim to rule over a defeated Dain. Her political moderation is seen as a sign of weakness among her critics. Ike, the young hero who led Crimea to victory in the Mad King's War, was granted a peerage for his heroism and bravery. The elevation of a common mercenary to the nobility, however, widened the rift between the aristocracy and the queen yet further. Perhaps to avoid becoming mired in these power struggles, Ike renounced his peerage and took his leave of the court. Yet Ike's actions did little to placate the nobility. They continued to criticize the queen's every decision and lay squarely at her feet the blame for all of Crimea's woes.
First rule of leadership: everything is your fault, to quote an amazing movie from my childhood. I've been looking forward to this prologue because I love the concept of this map so much. Firstly though, politics. This is one thing that I really like about the multiple perspectives of this story. So the things that we did during part 1 that seemed unambiguously the right thing at the time have actually caused problems from the Crimean perspective. Obviously, having Ashnard's son now being installed to the throne is gonna make these people very nervous. However, Alincia is still very good at making speeches. Those are great lines. Yeah, that's obviously sarcastic. So, public order is decreasing, to use Total War terms. Yeah, I've been playing that, and it is a pain keeping public order up sometimes. Well, probably because Bastion is awesome. She had her reasons for sending him away, but, Bastion's kind of a mystery to a lot of people. And here's Lucia. And here's some blatant exposition that you would know if you played the last game. And Joffrey's here too. Even the common Fire Emblem trope of the knight falling in love with the princess slash queen is being deconstructed here. Again, first rule of leadership, everything is her fault. You can't really blame her though, she was hidden without her consent from just about everyone else. It's not like she had much say in the matter. Hey there, Marsha, it's been a while. Time for some Pegasus bonding. And she's still using just as much hilarious made-up slang as always. It's kind of nice to see how the garden's been doing since we fought the final battle ended in the last game. Oh, I feel like Elincia's probably needed a lot of alone time to think lately. Running a country is extremely hard. That is pretty much the main theme of Part 2. And yeah, here's an explanation as to why Marsha's here. So, in the last game it was implied she was going back to Benyon, but here, and as you can see, yep, Elincia also hired Marsha's brother, but yeah, they needed some extra characters for Part 2, so they thought, oh, let's just say that Elincia hired Marsha as a royal knight. Well, I mean, the grief you're getting from your brother being here, but that too. Very, very good point. Yeah, Marsha's kind of used to it by now. And, you know, growing up with her brother, she's used to dealing with annoying people on a regular basis. And Elincia is still self-deprecating. Yeah, she's pretty much saying exactly what she did in the last cutscene of the last game, but... Are you forgetting what Ike told you all those years ago? And again, I love how we're seeing just what we did in the last part have consequences for other characters, and these are still people who are being depicted as sympathetic. I like the multiple perspectives of this story a lot. Yes, she does. Sadly, Ike is kind of gone at the moment, and we're not really sure where he is. She could definitely use him right about now. But him being gone gives her a good chance to develop in her own right. And now, in the skies above Melior... we have trouble. We haven't seen Neolucci for a while either. They teased him in the last game, but he's finally playable now. Leanne still speaks an ancient tongue. As you can see here, we have a ton of Wyvern Riders, and of course it's Benyon. Why wouldn't it be Benyon? They're still obsessed with the Serenades nobles, and... yep. The whole slave thing is still going on, despite the Apostles' attempts to stamp it out. Now, there's something kind of cool about the fact that Neolucci just transformed there. Yeah, we're gonna have to intervene here. Marsha is still great. Yeah, straight a bit. Please get back to your side now. Careful, Marsha. It might be a bad idea to mention that she's the queen. First boat monkeys, now wyvern monkeys. So Alincia's going incognito this time, although you'd think that her appearance would be very distinctive. I mean, she was in Bednion, and Sanaki officially lent her support to Alincia in the last game. However, as you'll be seeing, this guy is not the smartest of enemy commanders. He's kind of a giant idiot, so it's kind of understandable that he wouldn't recognize her. Oh, really? We'll see about that. Neolucci, shut up, please. Shut up. We're not supposed to say that. With an awesome new player phase fanfare? This is such a cool idea for a map. Yes, we actually have a chapter that's entirely in the sky, flyers only. Now, I see why they wouldn't give you maps like this very often in Fire Emblem, because if this, say, like, this really could have only been a prologue chapter. Because if this had come any later, if, say, all of your flyers were dead, you wouldn't be able to participate in the chapter at all. But I really wish there were more maps like this in Fire Emblem. This is such a cool concept. We're fighting in the sky with just flyers, and it's not like the map is totally barren of terrain. We have these clouds that give plus 15 evasion and plus 1 defense, so it's just a really cool chapter overall. So we have a whole bunch of these Draco Knights, who are kind of strong and have decent defense. We also have the boss here, Zephyrin. We don't need to beat him to end this chapter, but it's recommended. His stats are very high for this point in the game, but let's just say we'll have an answer to that soon. Oh yeah, and the clouds also count as, like, terrain that hinders your movement a little as well, so just bear that in mind. The clouds also shift at the beginning of every enemy phase, so be careful about, where you position people, because they might not always have cover. Also, this being the beginning of a part, I have a lot of bios to go through. So, first things first, our main character for part 2, Elincia.
Crimea, land of my birth. Land that made me who I am today.
Path of Radiance didn't just make Elincia stronger as a person, she's also much, much stronger in battle. Elincia is the first real third-tier unit we get. The Black Knight doesn't really count. And as such, she starts out pretty strong and comes with an enemy instantly dies skill. While she doesn't have all that much room to grow, her growths are insane, so she usually ends up with very good stats by the end of the game. She fulfills much the same role she did in Path of Radiance, being a highly mobile healer, except in this one, she can actually fight, and she can fight pretty well. Not only does she have an insane strength growth and, again, the enemy instantly dies skill, but she'll be getting Amity later on. It's still an infinite use brave weapon that raises her defenses, but it now has 15 might, putting it one below a silver blade. Though Elincia won't have access to it until 2 endgame. And she's actually not that good at killing things in 2 prologue because of that. On that note, despite being the protagonist of part 2, Elincia is only playable in 2 prologue and 2 endgame, and her availability isn't that great for the rest of the game. Elincia is, however, one of the few characters with bad availability who has the stats and role required to still be viable despite that. I find Elincia to be one of the best, if not the best, healers in Radiant Dawn. The only thing that holds her back in that regard is not being able to reach an SS rank in Staves. One interesting quirk of Elincia's class is it's actually treated as a physical class for the purposes of Imbue, which means, yeah, 30 HP recovery with that skill at Cap Magic. I'd highly recommend ditching Renewal for that when you have the chance. On the subject of ditching skills, Elincia weirdly gains a unique skill in Part 4 that holds her back in combat a lot, but you can just remove it. I'll talk more about that skill when the time comes. Overall, Elincia is fantastic in this game, even though she's not around for much of it. And Marsha. Elincia is a lot stronger in Radiant Dawn than she was in Path of Radiance. Unfortunately, Marsha went the other way. She's not bad by any means, but I just don't find Falcon Knights to be as good in Radiant Dawn as they were in Path of Radiance. And it's a little hard for me to explain why. I think it's a combination of their caps being a little low. A 36 speed cap isn't that great, especially when you can have 40 on a lot of other classes. And 32 strength is pretty low too. Wyvern Riders are also broken, so they have a lot of competition for flying classes, and we'll be getting some very powerful flying Laguz Royals later. And Marsha's bases aren't that high, and her growths aren't particularly good apart from speed and HP. She also has availability issues due to the way Part 2's party works. It's split into two vague sub-factions, one of which joins up with the Part 3 party early in that part, the other of which won't do that until very late in Part 3. Marsha unfortunately belongs to the latter sub-faction, so her availability really suffers. Like I said, she's still decent, but I just don't find her to be that amazing in Radiant Dawn. And two characters who appeared as NPCs in the last game but weren't fully playable, Neolucci, a guy who was almost playable in Path of Radiance but seemingly got cut at the last minute. He's very strong in Part 2, having amazing speed and pretty decent attack power. And he's also somewhat bulky while transformed. He's playable for a few Part 2 chapters, and he's actually a we cannot go on without you character. Unfortunately, he isn't playable at all in Part 3, and by the time he comes back in Part 4, let's just say that he rejoins at the exact same time a much better Crow does. Neolucci starts with the Wrath skill, which is usually used as free Wrath for someone else, and overall Wrath isn't that great in this game, thanks to it requiring 30% or less HP, and Vantage being nerfed. But it's at least something. Neolucci's growths aren't that great in any area except luck, but he does have decent defense for a Crow, although their caps are pretty low. There's not much more I can say. Neolucci is a flyer, and he's very useful during Part 2, but other than that, he suffers from availability issues. And Leanne. Finally, Leanne is actually playable. I'm sure a lot of people are looking forward to that. I said back in Raphael's bio that every heron has a unique gimmick to them. Leanne, unlike him, can fly and does have Canto. Her movement also gets higher on transformation. Much like him, her chants work the same way regardless of what form she's in. Leanne's chants always affect two characters, either those vertically or horizontally adjacent to her. She also starts out at the lowest level of the herons, but really, herons are gonna die to most enemies anyway, so their stats aren't that important. Leanne is often seen as the worst of the three herons in terms of chanting ability, but because the herons never directly compete with each other until endgame, that doesn't really matter much. For now, Leanne is the only heron we have, and that alone makes her amazing. Just one thing to mention. Neolucci actually used one use of his Laguz Stone during that cutscene. That's kind of a nice touch. Also, Leanne. Leanne is very special in this chapter. The way that she works is the enemies are trying to capture her rather than kill her. So we're kind of back to Thrakia 776 mechanics a little bit. If any of the enemies gets close to her, then they're going to try and capture her. This works the same as rescuing. They'll have their stats lowered, and they'll grab Leanne. If any of the enemies leave the map carrying her, it's a game over. Also, we have a new battle theme for Part 2. I really should have been quiet to show more of that, because it's a really cool song. It's called On Glory's Wings. Very fitting for the chapter that we're in. I guess I can show more of the battle theme now, although I do like Marsha to be staying around this side of the map. We'll see why very soon. But, that's less of a chance. Let's go for this then. The loop is a lot shorter than the Dawn Brigade one, but it's a nice song. I think I had that as my mobile phone ringtone at one point. So we still have quite a few Wyvern Riders here, which I'll need to try and deal with. Elincia, unfortunately, only begins with a slim sword, which has a whopping 2 might, which means that healing with the Mend Staff and counterattacking with that will actually result in only 1 less damage. And even though she does have an enemy instantly dies skill, the enemies might not be instantly dying to it. No stun there. You might also notice the enemies have very low accuracy against most of us, and that's because Elincia actually does have authority stars, and because she's our commander, those authority stars actually do something. Oh, unfortunately, Elincia couldn't counter down there to form a shield for Leanne. That's a shame. If I'm not careful, Leanne could get captured this turn. Because yeah, you have to remember that being flyers, the enemies can reach very far on this map. Let me just quickly check this. Yeah, she has 3-star authority, so all of us are at plus 15 to our accuracy and evasion, which is nice. Leanne, as I would have explained in her bio, can chant for people either north and south or east and west of her. Let's just try and finish off this Wyvern Rider here. Neolucci's not quite as tiny as Vika, but he's still pretty small. As you can see here, crows are extremely evasive. Enemies aren't going to have much chances of hitting Neolucci in this chapter, but it is a game over if he dies, and you'll need to watch out if he gets untransformed. Because even though he just used a Laguz Stone, his transform gauge will reduce as normal. Yeah, let's just move you to cover Leanne. Unfortunately that guy can still get to her. So I probably, I was going to start luring that guy in with Marsha, but I think I might actually need to have Marsha block off Leanne from above. Well, I hope you won't be able to reach that way. It doesn't look like you'll be able to reach. Because I like to have, even if Leanne gets captured now, it's not really the end of the world because I can easily rescue her, but I like to have her still active because that means more turns for us. Also, no chance of hitting, although that's still bad because it will lower my transform gauge. As you can see here, we get a visual representation of the transform gauge now that we're not using Volug. It's nice to be able to keep track of that, because that wasn't in Path of Radiance. You can only see the transform gauge during your phase, well, yeah, on the map screen rather than in battle. Also, these enemies have a new enemy phase battle theme. And Leanne still has Blessing. Okay, let's just deal with these guys. I like to sort of bunch up and deal with the enemies one at a time. That lowers the risk of Leanne getting captured. But I will want to finish off the boss with a certain character because, let's just say there's an amazing boss conversation in this one. I like the Crimea emblem on Elincia's Pegasus. That's going to be a running theme in this game. Most third-tier cavalry, including flyers, have their country's emblem on their horses', what do you call that exactly? I know there's a technical term for that. The sort of, horse road. That's a really silly way to put it. You know what I mean. I mean, I know that barding is armor, so obviously it's not barding. Oh, I love this song, though. It really fits Part 3 overall. It's just a theme that's really fitting of heroic knights charging enemies. Okay, you can go decently far. You can go very far. Let's... Okay, that is a one-shot, but... Yeah, I'm gonna finish you off. You have a hand axe anyway. I love that Lance Swirl Pegasus Knights do. As I probably said in Marsha's bio, though, Falcon Knights just aren't, and I am saying Falcon Knights, not Pegasus Knights, because you never get an unpromoted Pegasus Knight in this game, but Falcon Knights aren't exactly the best in this game. I'll probably need to heal you with, with Elincia soon. That is one thing about this game, though. Really, first-tier characters are more like trainees for other games rather than being actual first-tier classes, because after Part 1, every single character we get is going to be promoted. And Nielucci can't reach because of these clouds. I would really like to do that, but not sure. Should just show there are a lot of failure conditions for this chapter. In fact, Marsha is the only one we have currently who can die without giving a game over, which is pretty weird, but anyway. You do have a poleaxe, though. I'll need to watch out for the poleaxe. Yeah, you have an iron axe, so I guess I can try luring you in with Nielucci. I think I'll go in the clouds there, because if I go there, the cloud might shift and you won't be in clouds anymore. Again, this is such a cool idea for a chapter, and I wish there were more sky maps in Fire Emblem. You could have them as paralogs, maybe, or side quests, rather than, you know... Because, yeah, like I said, the problem with... Wow, okay, you actually would have still been in cover if I put you in the other place. But, yeah... I can see the problem with having these during the main story. If all your flyers are dead, unless they suddenly gave you a massive influx of flyer recruitments for that chapter only, there are problems, and I can see why they wouldn't be able to do anything like this outside of the prologue. Now, very soon, something interesting is going to end up happening, but for now, not so much. I'm going to have Marsha go over here. In fact, she can probably try javeling that guy. Marsha's probably the most worthy recipient of experience in this chapter. For now, at least. We'll have plenty of opportunities to train Alincia later. I do consider Alincia the best healer in this game, and I like to bring her to endgame, even though she's not forced there, which is kind of surprising, but yeah, she's not forced to endgame. But I like to bring her to endgame. She's also a very important character in terms of the story. And yeah, make sure you equip the, I mean, normally I wouldn't recommend equipping a slim sword, but it is the best thing we have at this point, which is sad. Speaking of the best thing we have at this point, which is sad, Leanne can't really do all that much, and yeah, he would have to end his turn in order for her to use a chant. This is a cool song, though we'll be hearing it a lot more later in the game. It's called Proud Flight, which also kind of makes sense given where we are. Clouds have shifted, but doesn't really matter. I'm just remembering, I think in Advance Wars Dual Strike, there's a map that's all in the sky and only air units, but I think it's the last map of the first, like, chapter of the game, even though the game isn't officially divided into chapters, but it's like the last map of the first major segment of the game. It's one of those dual... are they literally called Dual Strike maps? The ones that have both a top screen front and a bottom screen front, and you have to send units up to the top screen front. That was a pretty cool gimmick, but I think I remember that one was, like, you're attacking an air fortress, I think, and you've got, like, air units up there, and that's interesting. Okay, we still haven't seen the one that I really want to see. Speaking of which, I still haven't seen Stun activate yet. Which, I'd say in most cases might as well be called Kill, but not here. Come on, Alincia, please tell me that I positively jinxed that. Not on that attack. And yeah, if you take this map cautiously, it's really not that bad at all. The enemies have terrible hit rates, but Marsha can be in trouble if you're not careful. And also, if you let Leanne get captured early, things can very easily spiral out of control. That may have happened to me in practice once. Because Leanne is very useful here. Okay, let's... yeah, I can actually get you there and go for a Leanne Golda. Leanne often gets considered the worst of the three Herons, but she's still very useful for the time that you have her. Nielucci is going to be untransforming very soon. I'll need to watch out for that. This is actually one of those few defend chapters in this game that doesn't end when the boss dies. So the speedrun strategy for this chapter is kind of funny. After doing a certain important thing to do in this chapter, they just repeatedly end their turn. Because the enemies don't actually move if you don't get in their range, so you can easily just stay here and they won't do anything. And that's your transform gauge done. And that's a problem because, yeah, but at least birds have Kanto in this game. And I want to leave Marsha around here. I will be needing her for something very soon. As for Alincia, I guess Alincia will go down here. She unfortunately lacks ranged attacks. Ding, dang, ding, dong. I don't know, I've always found that part of the enemy phase battle theme for this part kind of funny. But yes, this guy's appeared. We'd heard him referred to. We'd heard legends spoken of the great broken force that would break the game into a million pieces. Hey Harp, would you like to help out here? I want to cure him of NPC-itis immediately, and to do that, we need to talk with Marsha. And Marsha is still great at recruiting people. Sometimes the world can get you down, and things don't turn out quite the way that you thought. Yep, play the Jill card. Yes, it is. What was that sound? It was the game itself, crying out in agony before it was suddenly silenced. This is Radiant Dawn Har. The man, the myth, the legend. There is no music that is worthy of Har's awesomeness, but the closest I can do is give Har's bio what is, in my opinion, the most awesome song I have ever heard in a video game. So, if you've been around any discussion involving Radiant Dawn, you've probably heard of Har. In the last game, he was simply an average late game pre-promote. In this game, he may as well be a god. Har is an almost perfect combination of everything that can make a Fire Emblem character good. His bases are amazing, his growths are amazing, his availability is amazing. Thanks to being in the sub-faction that joins up with the Part 3 party early in that part, Har is in the game almost as much as most of the main characters are. He uses the best weapon type in the game, his class is amazing, his movement is amazing as a consequence of that. He's only weak to a weapon type that sucks. He gets transfer bonuses. Really the only thing that could make him more perfect is if he had Earth Affinity. Like Alincia, Har is only usable for Prologue and Endgame in Part 2, but he's gonna do a lot of work in Endgame. When he returns in Part 3, he's an amazing asset to that team. And since they're a team of already insanely powerful characters, that really says something. The only negative thing I can really say about Har is that his speed growth is quite low, but that can be fixed with bonus experience. On hard mode, where you have a lot less bonus experience, I sometimes find he doesn't quite cap speed by endgame, and his speed cap on hard mode is not quite enough to double endgame enemies anyway, so he does start to fall off a tiny bit at the very end on hard mode. That's still pretty amazing. As if things couldn't get any better, the English version accidentally gave Har a massive buff by removing one of the limitations on promoting to 3rd tier. This means that in the English version only, it's possible to dump a ton of bonus experience into Har into endgame and 3rd tier him right there, and then the game dies in horrible screaming agony. I should also mention that Har has been known to cap everything long before hitting maximum level. Yep, pretty much typical Har. Har is often considered one of the most brokenly overpowered characters in the entire Fire Emblem series. And it's not hard to see why. Because of this, I'm not planning on bringing him to endgame because he's a little overused there, but I will still be using him a bit during 2 endgame and part 3. And he can't get to any enemies this turn, dang it. Okay, so I will have Alincia fight this guy, then I'll Kanto her into a place where I'll need to Kanto her, let's see, into that cloud there. That one right there. Because I really want to get Har in range of the boss, because here's the thing. So, in the last game, Ike had some great conversations, and Ike still has great boss conversations in this game. I feel like Ike has... Also, we're finally seeing this, and this is not going to kill you, actually. So finally we get to see the secondary effect of stun. But I feel like Ike definitely has some of the best boss conversations in the duology. But... Oh, Leanne can't even get there. Okay then. But... Har has maybe the second... Oh, do I use this now? I don't think I need it. Yeah, I'll do that. Har, I would say, almost is up there with Ike in terms of extremely awesome boss conversations. One thing that I will say about this game is that... I agree that the main story is not as well written as Path of Radiance, but this game does have some fantastic writing in its special boss conversations, and you're about to see one of my favorites. Unfortunately, Har's only ranged weapon is a javelin, rather than a hand axe. But it's not like he really cares about the puny weapon triangle. As I said, you're about to see one of my favorite boss conversations, hopefully. I'll just keep you there for now, and I might have to Lagoon Stone Mialucci later. Here it is! That right there, like, I seriously want to applaud whoever came up with that line. That is a fantastic line. Oh, okay. Mention Shaharam. That's gonna get you even more horribly murdered. Also, Har's next line is just as good. Har is an absolute master of one-liners in this game, as you'll see later on. He's just so awesome. And as you can see, he doubles everything. Even gains a decent amount of experience from enemies, too. Doesn't get hit. I had a feeling that you wouldn't totally destroy that guy. That's fine. I want to have Har whack the boss, Nick. I mean, admittedly, it's not really that much of a priority to have Har kill the boss because, I mean, he doesn't really need experience at this point, but I should just quickly say, we only have a very brief taste of Ha here. Very, very brief. He's not going to come back until 2 Endgame, just like Alicia. But even then, he is still ridiculous in 2 Endgame. In fact, I might as well do this, because this is also a special boss conversation, and yeah. Slim swords, everyone! Don't worry, Alicia gets much, much better later on. Much better. Yeah, let me just make sure that I can have Ha finish that guy off. I can, but you know what? I think I'm actually going to heal Ha first. Also, I can talk to him. What are you doing here? Why, completely devastating the game, of course. They kinda do, actually. Ha's dialogue in general is just great. Really does lend credence to that. Well, no, it's not really a theory. I don't think they ever intended Ha to be a main character in this game, but he might as well be. Okay, now that's 1 damage off killing you, which means actually Alicia probably should fight that guy. But that also means I'll need to get you protected, so let's just retreat you a little bit, and let's put you in here. Yeah, see, even only being able to refresh 2 people, Leanne is still very useful. But you do want to make sure that you don't have Leanne near the edges of the map, because a Wyvern Rider can then grab her and then leave immediately, and then that's an instant game over, so don't do that. That's a terrible idea. This is a special boss conversation, and it will at least give Ha exactly enough damage to finish this guy off. Yeah, if only you knew who you were talking to. It was nice knowing you. You hear this boss music a lot, but it's a pretty good boss theme, so I'm okay with that. And yeah, you can Kanto back. And now, goodbye, boss. Don't even need to pay attention to the combat forecast, because I already know how this is going to end. Oh, wow. It ended even better than I thought it would. Goodbye. You have become a victim of Radiant Har. Worth quite a lot of experience, too. Yep, you don't even get dignified with a proper sentence as death quotes. And Ha has a short axe now, which is going to be really useful. Because now you can actually have weapon triangle on these guys, although firstly, I might as well get rid of the iron pole axe. Though, Leanne is actually going to get captured this turn, I just realized. Unless I can somehow Kanto Marsha below her. But this is the point where the, I think even in the speedrun, they do actually have Ha kill the boss with the short axe, or maybe they don't, yeah. But this is the point in the speedrun where they just repeatedly end their turns, because getting Ha is all they need to do. And yeah, at least I was able to demo Leanne being captured. It's the same as rescuing, you're at half skill and speed, so... yeah, I really don't need Ha to fight you. Let's just go for another stun here. Half skill and speed doesn't matter all that much when we're already doubling these guys anyway. Come on, stun. And stun wouldn't have actually killed in this situation either. Get used to it. This is one of the very few times that a mastery skill won't instantly kill something. I would have half finished this guy, but, Martian needs the experience. Oh, you know what the heck. Ha time. we aren't going to be seeing Ha for a while, whereas Marsha will be coming back in a couple of chapters. And at this point, we really have nothing to do. And there's Leanne, unfortunately, she can't move. No reinforcements, and can I heal anyone? Doesn't look like it. So that's part 1 prologue. I always found Leanne's portrait, I like most of the portraits in Radiant Dawn, but I found Leanne's looks a bit weird. I much prefer a Path of Radiance portrait. There's just something weird about her face and the way it's positioned. And as usual, other people kind of have to translate for Leanne. That is very true, as strong as you are. You probably wouldn't be able to stop them from taking Leanne. Well, that's interesting. But he's not there. I think a lot of people have things to say to Ike at this point. Don't say that, though. That's gonna jinx it. Hopefully it will. Once you get a better weapon, then you're incredibly powerful at this point. And yeah, no turn bonus, because this always takes 8 turns. So, we've now made a foothold in part 2. I'll see you next time for that unrest she was talking about.